whether the weather is cold or whether the weather is hot. We'll weather the weather, whatever the weather, whether we like it or not. Hi everyone, this is Monica with #GoalsEnglish. And today we're going to do this sort of theater warm-up, or you can consider it a tongue twister, weather the weather. So this is a good one for practicing the voiced TH and the W's. So let's hear it through once. Whether the weather is cold or whether the weather is hot. We'll weather the weather, whatever the weather, whether we like it or not. Right. Once more. Whether the weather is cold or whether the weather is hot. We'll weather the weather, whatever the weather, whether we like it or not. So now we're going to go through some of the sounds in this, and we'll come back to this later and do it slower so you can follow along with me. So the main sound that's a difficulty in this one is the voiced TH. So there's two different THs. We have the unvoiced, like moth, and then we have the voiced, as in mother. So this tongue twister or kind of rhyme has the TH that is voiced, which means it uses your vocal cords. So the tongue is just behind the top teeth, and the air vibrates as it passes between the teeth and the tongue. So a mistake a lot of students make is that they stick the tongue out, which you can make the sound that way, but it's going to slow you up if you have to go weather, the weather. It takes too long to get your tongue out there. So if you have your front teeth and your tongue is just behind the front teeth, the weather, weather. You don't want to stick the tongue out if you can avoid it. If you can't, at least try to pull it back, weather, weather, a little bit. Don't put it too far outside of the teeth. I feel maybe just the very tip of my tongue hitting the bottom of the teeth, or I just keep it up behind the teeth. Weather the weather, weather the weather. And of course the lips are relaxed. Weather the weather. So let's look at this. The TH sound again, the. And actually when I make the TH sound, I'm also making the word the, because it's almost impossible to just make the TH without some sort of vowel. And so the vowel that comes out when we make a sound, like when we teach someone a sound, p, b, m, that's called a schwa, the that you're hearing. So in the word the, we have a schwa, the. And then of course, these two different spellings of weather are the same pronunciation, weather. So short E, and the R controlled vowel at the end, weather, weather. Weather the weather. And then we of course have the W sound. So depending on what your native language is, some students have difficulty with the W sound as well. So it's again a voiced sound. We use your vocal cords. The tongue is down behind the bottom of the teeth, and the lips are rounding and pushing forward. W, w. So we don't want a V sound, v, which is where the lips are hitting the top of the teeth. V is a V, w. Completely round, and the lips are not touching the teeth. W. So if we look at these words, we'll, right? We'll weather the weather. And a lot of times this gets reduced, so instead of a long E, we'll, it'll get wool. We'll weather the weather. So it's almost more of a schwa, wool. Then we have whatever. So in the learnersdictionary.com, which I suggest if you want to look up these IPA symbols, it will have a T there, whatever, but we don't pronounce the T. We pronounce it as a flap T, which sounds more like a D in English. Whatever, whatever. And there's we have that V sound, v. Whatever the weather. So short U, whatever. And then we have, of course, the same word with the THs, weather. Weather. So I'm going to go through this slowly. Make sure you are repeating and practicing and not only watching. Let's go. Whether the weather is cold or whether the weather is hot. We'll weather the weather, whatever the weather, whether we like it or not. And notice these stop T's. So we don't say hot, we say hot. And it. Hot, it. So let's do this again, line by line. Whether the weather is cold or whether the weather is hot. We'll weather the weather, whatever the weather, whether we like it or not. So I'm going to go through this at a normal speed. And there's kind of a rhythm to this one. Whether the weather is cold or whether the weather is hot. We'll weather the weather, whatever the weather, whether we like it or not. So that might be a little too fast for you. I'll slow it down a little bit. Whether the weather is cold or whether the weather is hot. We'll weather the weather, whatever the weather, whether we like it or not. I don't know why I turned into a whisper there. Now, this is often used as a vocal warm-up for theater. And so it's used we tend to overdo it with our mouth to get warmed up to perform. So we use our diaphragm, which means we're like having our voice come from deep within our belly. Or you can use your chest voice as well, but diaphragm is better. And we overdo all of the sounds. And this is a really great warm-up to get all the muscles moving in your mouth, your face, your tongue. So we're going to do it that way. So this is not a natural way to speak. This is just an exercise to help you get the muscles warmed up. So, and you might see that tongue sticking out further for this TH when I do it this way, because that's the way to overemphasize the TH, right? So let's try it. Whether the weather is cold or whether the weather is hot. We'll weather the weather, whatever the weather, whether we like it or not. And see, when I switched to overemphasizing, the T's came back and they're crispy now. Hot, it, not, which is not how we speak in normal person-to-person conversation. That's only done mostly in the theater, or if you're a teacher or public speaking possibly, and you're trying to emphasize each word and fill up a big space with your voice, right? So let's go back to the normal way with a rhythm and pick up the pace a little bit. Whether the weather is cold or whether the weather is hot. We'll weather the weather, whatever the weather, whether we like it or not. Faster, whether the weather is cold or whether the weather is hot. We'll weather the weather, whatever the weather, whether we like it or not. Faster, whether the weather is cold or whether the weather is hot. We'll weather the weather, whatever the weather, whether we like it or not. Faster, whether the weather is cold or whether the weather is hot. We'll weather the weather, whatever the weather, whether we like it or not. Whether the weather is cold or whether the weather is hot. We'll weather the weather, whatever the weather, whether we like it or not. Okay, so I'm going to do that one more time at a regular speed without the clapping. Whether the weather is cold or whether the weather is hot. We'll weather the weather, whatever the weather, whether we like it or not. Whew, okay, so that's a tough one. That's going to take repeated tries, I'm sure. If you got it on the first try, I don't know, leave me a comment and I will give you a big round of applause because that would be amazing. This one is one of the tougher ones. When I send it to my students, their eyes get big and they go, uh-oh. So if you can get this one, awesome, you're well on your way. The is the most used word in the English language. So if you can properly pronounce the, you're well on your way to sounding more like a fluent speaker, right? So I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, comments, lesson requests, please leave them in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe if you liked this video and you want to see more like it. Hit the bell if you want to see these videos first. And I will see you next time. Keep practicing. Whether the weather is cold or whether the weather is hot, we'll weather the weather, whatever the weather, whether we like it or not.